Hello, my name is Ryan Emanuel, and my book is called On the Swamp: Fighting for Indigenous Environmental Justice. I'm an associate professor of hydrology in the Nicholas School, and I'm also an enrolled citizen of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, the largest native nation in the eastern United States. For many years, my research and teaching revolved around quantitative aspects of water and natural environments. My students and I measured and calculated runoff from mountain streams, evaporation from agricultural landscapes, and the movement of salt and pollutants through coastal rivers. But about 10 years ago, my work branched out into questions around public policies that deal with environmental justice and Indigenous rights. You see, I'd begun to work closely with tribal governments and intertribal organizations here in North Carolina, which has one of the largest Indigenous populations of any state in the U.S. As I pursued that work, I was struck by the barriers that Indigenous peoples face when it came to participating in decision-making about their ancestral and present-day homelands. Why were Indigenous perspectives so often ignored in environmental permitting or policymaking? Why are pollution and harmful infrastructure concentrated in Indigenous communities? At the same time, I was inspired by the resilience, determination, and grit that I witnessed, both by leaders and everyday community members, in the face of radical environmental change. I recognize this determined attitude. My parents, who are both Lumbee, grew up during Jim Crow segregation. They and other elders taught me all about the discrimination that they faced on the basis of their Native identity. And even though we were decades beyond segregated schools and lunch counters, I still witnessed Lumbee people and their Indigenous neighbors struggling to be treated fairly and to be engaged meaningfully in decisions about fossil fuel infrastructure, industrial livestock operations, and other radical transformations to the places that we've called home since time immemorial. And at the same time, I also recognize that all of these struggles traced, at least in part, back to colonialism, an insatiable desire to extract resources and expel Indigenous peoples from their lands. On the Swamp tells the stories of these struggles by Indigenous peoples in eastern North Carolina. It even includes a ghost story. But more importantly, the book tells stories of hope in the face of colonial erasure. As I write in the introduction, colonialism is powerful but incomplete. Against the odds, Lumbees and our Indigenous neighbors continue to thrive in the coastal plain. We're forever changed by colonialism, but like the water that pools and trickles through our swamps, we flow on. I wrote On the Swamp so that Indigenous peoples of this region could see themselves reflected in contemporary discussions about climate change, sustainability, and justice. I also wrote it for students and for environmental professionals, and really for anyone who has an interest in understanding environmental justice, Indigenous rights, and their deep connections to colonialism. I also hope this book will challenge all readers to examine their ideas and assumptions about what it means for Indigenous peoples to preserve, steward, and exert sovereignty over their homelands. Regardless of who you are or where you live, these lessons are important, and I hope that On the Swamp entertains and enriches your life in some way.